All right, our jurors and alternates have returned to the courtroom. All counsel are present except for Mr. DeGuerin, but Mr. Chesnoff, I think you can hold down the fort. And Mr. Milius, you may resume the videotape testimony.
Mr. Schwartz, as if to resume the witness stand, you remain under oath. Mr. DeGuerin, you may continue with your cross-examination.
Mr. Schwartz, I don't want to just go minutia. So what I've got on the screen right now is just a map of New York, of Manhattan, Florida, kind of the middle of the island. There's 3 locations on it, one of which you don't know anything about, which is 67 Riverside Drive. The other is 112 East 86th Street, and that was the Durst apartment. And the third is 124 West 43rd. That was the location of Zenon's nightclub. I think when we wrote, we talked about, well, it's over 40 blocks away. And I asked you, well, at 11 o'clock at night, how long do you think it would take to get between the two?
Yeah, and that was now.
Well, I want to refine that a little bit. What time was it when you say Bob took you?
I don't recall the exact time, but it was late at night.
Would it have been early in the morning?
It's possible it could have been early in the morning of the next day. That's possible.
Okay. And you did make a report to the police. You did talk to the police, right?
You mean at the time of the incident?
Yes.
When the officer came to the apartment, I don't now recall actually having spoken with him. I believe Kathy spoke with him.
Okay. Well, I want to show you another document. It's not your document. It's just to see if it refreshes your recollection and to see if it's accurate, like we did, much like we did earlier with that police document from Detective Mulitz. And this will be LADA 96978, which is now, I believe, will be our C.
That'll be C. They placed a map. There was no question to the witness, so we'll call this C.
All right, now what's on the screen now? You tell me if you can read that. All right.
Which area would you like to look at?
Well, I'm going to point out the areas. Can you see it?
I can see it fine.
All right. First, let me draw your attention to the type of document this is. It's not your document. You didn't sign it, I understand, but I want to see if the information is correct. There's the location that this occurred. I can't find it. No, that's, yeah, there it is. 12 East 86th Street. That's correct, isn't it?
I believe so.
Now, if we had to set this aside and ask you the address, could you recall it without referring to your notes or to other reports?
I don't know that I could.
And again, it's 36 years ago. We understand that. By the way, I have a photograph of you that I believe is about 36 years old. I'd like to display it to you and see if you agree that this is you. It's on the screen now. We mark this D.
Yes, that is me.
Is that you about the same time that these events occurred?
It might be slightly before.
There were times when you had a mustache and times when you didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, so just for identification purposes, we'll mark that and ask to introduce that as D, I believe.
D, yes.
Now back to C, which is the police record. The date and time of occurrence. We can bring that up and enlarge it, please. police officer has written in his report, presumably what's been told by witnesses or you, that the date and time of the occurrence is February the 1st, 81 at 0500. That's 5 o'clock in the morning. Does that comport with your recollection about when it was?
I don't recall it being that early in the morning.
That earlier or that later?
That late, sorry.
Well, could it be? Correct.
I suppose it could. Just don't recall it being that late in the morning.
Well, that's why I started with what time do you think it was? I just don't know at this time.
I don't know exactly, no. And also, I don't know when this report was written.
Well, we can find that on the report. So let's put together the time lapse. You left Connecticut at what time?
I don't recall the time.
Was it already dark?
I believe it was already dark.
Okay. And how long would it take you to drive from Danbury
Correct.
to Manhattan to Upper Manhattan, 86th Street?
Possibly an hour and 20 minutes, thereabouts.
Okay.
Give or take.
And then you were at the party for a while.
Correct.
And then while you were at the party, somebody suggested everybody leave and go to Zenon or Zenon's.
Correct.
What time did that occur? How long had you been at the party?
Probably at least a few hours, maybe more than that. I don't really know the time frame as to when I was suggested and how long I was there.
You could, the microphone should actually.
So that would probably make it after midnight, wouldn't it?
Well, depending on the time I arrived.
Yes. And you're the only one that can tell us that.
Right, I'm not able to because I don't recall the time I got there.
You left Danbury after dark. It takes about an hour to get there, and you were there at the party, according to what you said, several hours before somebody suggested going.
Correct.
Okay, what time did it get dark?
I don't know.
Okay, in February. You're a long-time resident of Danbury, aren't you?
Long time.
Okay, what time does it get dark? About February.
February? Probably
6 o'clock.
maybe before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
5:30?
5.
Okay, 5 o'clock, an hour to drive in, but it's already dark when you leave, right?
I believe it was.
Okay, so you leave 6 o'clock?
Possibly.
Was this a weekday or weeknight?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
I'd have to look at the calendar.
all right. We can probably arrange that. Somebody get.
The rain man would remember.
And everything else.
If you want to stipulate as to what day February 1st was.
Yeah, February 1st was the day, the morning, so it would be January 31st.
No, but if we stipulate on what day February 1st is, then we'll be able to figure out January 31st. If you want, we're more than willing to stipulate, if Google is correct, February 1st, 1981 was a Sunday, if you want to set that stipulation.
That's what our information is too. We're in rare agreement. And so it was Saturday when we left. And the traffic, you're familiar with the traffic, which way did you come into the city?
I probably would have come in.
If you remember.
Oh, well, I don't recall actually.
Okay. So we're Saturday evenings, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, If one of the other persons with you, Susan Grossman, remembered it as being about 9 or 10 when you left Danbury, would you argue with that?
Well, if that's what she's saying, I guess I wouldn't argue with it.
I don't know whether when this is presented she will have testified yet or not, but we do have her statement saying that it was about 9 or 10.
If she remembers that, then I don't recall it.
Okay, so
I didn't
I'm just trying to get to the when. So if you left at 9 or 10, that means you would be in Manhattan at 10 or 11. Is that right?
Well, if you take that first statement as back, yes.
I'm just going by what you tell us it takes to get to.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying
Midtown.
if you accept the statement that it was what Susan Grossman said in terms of when we got there or when we left.
When you left in.
When we left. And if you accept that statement, then yes, you'd be correct in saying that we would have arrived at the time indicated.
Okay. And then if you're at the party for several hours, in your language, before the incident, or before someone suggested that you leave, now we're talking about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, right?
Well, if I got there at, what, 10?
No, left Danbury at 9 or 10.
Or sometimes 10. If it was 9, we got there at 30 or so.
Okay.
And if we were there for a few hours, it would have been maybe around midnight. I mean, these are all
Relative.
pretty should, you know?
And you don't have a recollection of what time it was?
I don't have a regulation exactly, no.
Okay. And I had asked you previously before the break about what you were doing, smoking, drinking, or taking cocaine, or anything else. And by the way, let me make sure you understand, the statute of limitations has long run. Not even Mr. Lewin could prosecute you for something that you did back then.
Don't worry, Mr. DeGuerin will defend you.
Hopefully,
Save your money.
So,
yes.
what were you doing?
I don't recall doing anything.
Nothing?
I don't recall doing anything. I'm not a drinker. So I was more than likely not drinking anything. And I don't recall doing any specific drugs. I don't recall having any, and I didn't really know any people there except for who I was with.
Susan?
I don't recall them having any drugs.
You knew Susan Grossman.
I knew her, yes.
You knew Kathy Traxman.
Yeah, just so.
And you knew Gilberta Ajami.
Right, I knew her, but I wasn't with her.
And you had your girlfriend with you.
Right.
And you knew, or at least had seen on one occasion before, you said, Kathy Durst.
Right.
And you were at the same place where a few months earlier, we don't know the exact date, you had, how many months earlier was it when you saw Gilberta bring the bag of cocaine, you saw somebody else with the bag of cocaine at the same place? How much earlier was it?
First, the characterization of it was cocaine, I don't know that. I saw a bag of white substance. You could assume it was cocaine, but I don't know it. I wasn't involved in any of that, so I don't really know. And you can make that assumption. I don't know how many months in between the time frame of when that was.
Sometime between the first time you met Kathy at Gilberta Ajami's house and the night or morning of the incident.
It was sometime in between.
Okay, you can't tell us, can't be any more specific than that.
Nothing to relate it to. I don't know. It could have been a couple of months, could have been more than that, less.
But the point is, you're back at the same place where you had been shot by what Gilberta Ajami had bought, right?
Well, yeah, I was upset about the fact that she involved me in that, yeah.
Okay. And did you see cocaine being used that night, the night of the incident?
At the party?
Yeah.
I don't really recall seeing any using cocaine. People were in different parts of the room or in different parts of the house. I wasn't really anything per se. So I don't really know.
Well, but now it's getting kind of late, isn't it? Or moving into the morning. before someone suggests that you go to Xenon.
Correct.
Give us an estimate of the time?
Of when they wanted to go?
Yes. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock?
Yeah, well, when someone said, let's go. If you look at when I was attacked, it would have been somewhat before that.
Well, let me get back to what the point is. You said that Mr. Durst was gone for about 20 minutes, or that he came back in about 20 minutes.
I think if you ask me to make an estimate, that's what I don't know if that's the best estimate or not.
Actually, what came on direct examination when you were being questioned by Mr. Bailey. So it was your estimate. Could you be wrong in that estimate?
It's possible.
And that's why I brought the map out. If we could have a map, we'll just go ahead and mark that map. That'll be E. I know you're familiar, I think, with Manhattan. I am. And to get from East 86th Street all the way down to West 43rd Street, first you probably take Park with you. I mean, it's a few, not Park, but 5th. 5th runs south, one way. Okay, and you go 40 and some odd blocks to get to West 43rd, right?
It seems to be correct.
And as you described the events, everybody at the party went downstairs in 2 groups. The first group left, and you were left with a group that had Kathleen. Is that right? You have to verbalize it.
Correct.
And Kathy suggested you say that you stay there and go back upstairs and drink tea.
I don't recall what she wanted to do, just to hang out and commiserate.
Commiserate?
Just talk.
Have you said that before? I mean, the word commiserate is specific, but just talk is a little bit more general.
Well, maybe the word was poorly chosen.
Okay. So she suggested that you go back upstairs.
That's right.
All right. But to your knowledge, nobody was using cocaine, or you just don't know?
I just don't know.
What about marijuana?
I don't know if anybody was doing anything.
Or drinking alcohol?
Don't really know.
All right. Now, if Mr. Durst and his party went all the way down to Xenon and waited for you, thinking that you were coming, if Mr. Durst and his party went all the way down to Xenon and waited for you guys and you didn't show up, and then he came back, it'd take a lot more than 20 minutes, wouldn't it?
Well, it's an assumption that he actually went all the way down there. He might have assumed that we were coming right with him behind him. He didn't see us, I don't know.
When he got back, he was angry that you hadn't joined me, wasn't he?
Yeah, there's some.
Okay. And when he got back, he asked everybody to leave, didn't he?
I don't recall him asking people to leave.
Have you talked with Susan Grossman about this?
No, I haven't.
All right. If, let's assume for a moment that it becomes admissible, what she says about this, if she said that Bob asked everybody to leave, who would be more accurate in their memory? You or her?
I don't know.
If she gave a statement shortly after this happened that has that in it, that Bob asked everybody to leave, and of course you haven't given a statement that was that contemporaneous with it, then who would be more accurate?
Well, if she gave a statement soon after the situation, and she said that, it would probably be more accurate from her point of view.
Certainly, Bob would have the authority to ask everybody to leave his own apartment, wouldn't he?
Sure.
Did he tell you to leave?
I'm saying leave. The only thing I recall is when he walked into the room, I was immediately attacked. I don't recall anything preceding that. I don't recall any kind of verbalization. He may have said afterwards when I was still trying to recover from an injury, something like that.
Get out.
Possible. It's possible. But more than likely it would happen after I was assaulted. And if that
Well,
was
of course,
the
I'm
case-
not asking you to speculate. I'm asking you to use your best recollection as to what actually happened. And here's my question. Do you remember that he said to you before the attack occurred, get out, or some words to those effect, everybody leave?
No.
He did say, just a moment ago, you said that he said nothing before the attack occurred, but then earlier before lunch he said something like, you're the only guy here.
Right, he said that.
Okay, so he did say something.
Yes, correct.
Is it possible that you just didn't hear him say, get out?
If he said get out while he was charging me, I don't think I would have heard it. I would have been more concerned about being attacked. So I don't know.
Well, that's really not an answer. My question is specifically, do you recall whether or not he said, get out, before the attack occurred?
I don't have any recall of him saying that.
He did say, you're the only guy here.
But he said that I remember that.
And you were the only guy there.
I was, except for him.
And he was angry.
He was angry.
Okay? Now, did he punch you or kick you?
He kicked me. He never punched me.
Let's look again at our Exhibit C, I believe it is. That's 0967, 0096978. This is the police report. And I want you to look at the details. We can highlight that AC.
I see it.
Okay. AC, I believe, means accept charges. AC.
Except
The defendant did punch the complainant with his fist, causing injury. Now let's assume for a moment that AC means accept charges. Did you tell the police officer that?
no.
Did you say anything like that?
No.
Do you know who told the police officer that?
No idea. May I say something?
Well, does it have to do with having punched the complainant with his fist, causing injury?
I believe it's relevant to that.
I think maybe the judge ought to explain the rules here too.
It's not really a dialogue, it's his chance to kind of questions to you, but the deputy district attorney may ask you questions such as the one you're contemplating stating.
Well, my question is, do you know when he was arrested?
He does.
Screen base number 154529 and ask you, do you recognize those three pieces of paper?
Yes.
Does that include your handwriting?
My handwriting's there, not on the, let's see. Yes, everything's in my handwriting.
And those three pieces of paper are documents that you provided to the district attorney's office here, is that correct?
Correct.
So those were in your records?
Correct.
We move to introduce 154529 as this will be our E, I suppose.
This is
F. F, okay, thank you.
Mr. Defendant's notes for the
Being marked or being introduced.
it'll be marked.
Okay. We move to introduce it. He's identified it as being part of the
I'll do that at the end of the proceedings.
So, in the upper right-hand corner, the words are written, date of arrest 2581. Is that your handwriting?
That is.
Where did you get that information where you wrote date of arrest 2581?
I don't recall where I got that.
You wouldn't have written it there unless you thought it was accurate. Is that right? Which one is it? Okay, so right now it's your testimony that you do not recall where you got the information on the date of arrest as 2581 as you wrote on this document F.
At this time, I do not recall.
Okay. And it's been 36 years, right?
Has been?
You also have another piece of paper on the same document. It's a different color. It says plead guilty, or I'm pronouncing it plead. Did you mean to write pled guilty?
Yes.
Okay. Charges was harassment, conditional discharge, 6 months, still open. Did I give you any clue as to when you wrote that?
No.
I assume that you were checking on the case to find out the disposition. I assume that you were asking for information and then you wrote down what you were told.
That would make sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
On the screen appears to be something that I'll now mark as G.
Wasn't this marked already? It looks familiar.
People's Point.
It's a different one.
Oh. No, it's one.
Here's this one. 96750. We mark this as G. Can you identify this piece of paper, Mr. Schwartz?
It's not handwritten.
And is this a document that you supplied to the district attorney's office?
I believe it is.
Okay. And is that a note that you made contemporaneously with the things that you described on it? Is this a note that you made to yourself?
It is.
And did you make it contemporaneously or thereabouts with the information that you were recording?
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Did you write it down pretty close to when you learned the information? Okay. Let's go back to the government's exhibit 154-513, base number. You remember when you identified this document? What's the government's number?
People's Point.
People's 20 is on the screen now. This appears to be the same sort of note that you made to yourself at about the time you got the information. Am I correct about that?
I would have written this during or just after having had the conversation.
Okay, we're saying the same thing. You wrote down the information soon after you got it.
Or during.
Okay. And now let's go back to our G. Can we put them side by side? Uh, 9675. Okay, Mr. Schwartz, the one on the right on the screen is the one that's under consideration now. The one on the left is already in evidence or has been offered by the prosecution. And they appear to be both the same handwriting. Is that both your handwriting?
It is.
Okay. And did you make the one on the right under some similar circumstances as you did the one on the left?
Well, the first part where it says Kathy Durst called.
Hold on a second. I'm not going into the content. I'm asking you simply, did you make notes to yourself like the one on the right the same as you did the one on the left?
Well, in the sense that the one on the left, in the top section was done at one time. The one on the right the first two lines were done at one time, and I don't recall if the rest of it was done at the same time or not.
Well, that's fine. I'm just going to ask you about the first two lines anyway. So it's a note that you made about the same time as you got the information.
Correct.
All right. And it's, everything's your handwriting, so
It is.
let me set it up this way, Mr. Schwartz, please. Earlier, you said you had recollected two occasions in which you had interaction with Kathy Durst. One of them is at Gilbert and Johnny's house, maybe a year before the last time, which was the time that you say you were kicked by Mr. Durst. Am I correct about that? Okay. Did you talk to her on the phone?
Referring to me.
At any time?
Yes, I spoke to you on the phone.
You already testified that you talked to her on the phone, you think on January the 31st of 1982,
Yes.
right? And that's when she seemed to be agitated, that you wouldn't tell her what the status was of your claim against Mr. Durst.
That's correct.
Even though just a week or so earlier you had filed a lawsuit against Mr. Durst, you refused to tell her about it.
That's completely correct.
Okay. So now, did she call you on July the 13th of, and I can't read you what you say, is that an 81?
Yeah, this must be 81.
Okay. So do you recall that phone call?
Not really.
Well,
I mean, if I wrote it down, I'm sure it happened.
okay, and that's kind of the layman's way of getting to what we lawyers have to get to a different way. So you don't have any independent recollection of the call, but if you wrote it down, that would be your past recollection recorded, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
Here's what and understanding that it's your handwriting, and if I mangle it, please correct me. Kathy Durst called me on 7/13/81 to inquire if I would settle out of court. Have I read that correctly?
Yes, you have.
Do you now recall that phone call?
No.
If that happened and you wrote that down, would that phone call have happened?
If I wrote it down, yes.
Okay, you just don't have any present recollection of it.
That's correct. That's okay.
That part of it. So Kathy Durst, we get from this that Kathy Durst must have had your telephone number, right?
I'm sorry?
Kathy Durst must have had your telephone number.
Seems likely. Unless the number was dialed.
Is this another one where you think you heard somebody else hang up the phone at the same time?
Is that a question?
Yes, it started with a question. Is this another one?
What do you mean by another one?
Because you've testified already, sir,
Yes.
that you thought the other telephone call, there was somebody on the line because you heard two disconnects.
I did say that, yes.
Yes, you did. So, is this another one that, where there's someone listening on that line?
I didn't make any note of that, so I wouldn't.
Well, yes, you did. Someone was listening on the line. That's from,
Where?
that's from,
You can't complain.
you did write down on People's Exhibit 20. Someone was listening on the line.
Right, I wrote that.
And you said in your testimony that you concluded that because you heard two clicks, I think, of the phone.
Yeah, I heard what sounded as though two people hanging up or two phones hanging up.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking you this about the second phone call that you wrote down, and that's your past recollection recorded, the phone call on July the 13th, 81, whether someone else was on the line.
I didn't make any note there of that.
No, you did?
No.
So do you have any recollection of anyone being on the line?
I don't.
And I ask you that also because you speculated that someone else may have dialed the phone for her when I ask you whether that means that Kathy Durst had your number.
I probably shouldn't have said it was more than just.
Okay. Well, do this, if you will, when you're making a statement in jest or something that you don't want us to take seriously, will you tell us?
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Now, so do you recall what you told Kathy on that phone call? I know you say you don't recall the phone call, but
I don't recall what I said to her, no.
you had not yet filed the civil case on July the 13th, 81. Had you?
If the records show that I didn't, then I would be accurate.
Okay. Well, we've established, I don't mean to keep going back, but we've established that the petition was signed on January the 15th, 22nd, 1982. Right?
That sounds accurate.
Okay. Did Kathy call you on other occasions?
I don't recall those conversations.
I'm going to show you a document that we've been supplied by the prosecution. It's case number 081170. And let me see if I can identify this for you. I believe this is a summary of some telephone records for a telephone listed to Robert Durst at 37 Riverside Drive, beginning December 1st of 81 and going down through December 15th of 81. And I want to direct your attention to the bottom of the page where there are 3 phone calls listed from that number to Schwartz, Peter, from Bridgeport, Connecticut for the first one, and Danbury, Connecticut for the next 2. My question is, did Bob Durst ever call you on the telephone?
I don't recall him ever calling me on the phone.
Kathy Durst called you on the telephone.
Well, yes, she did.
All right, in this then, Bob Durst never calling you on the phone from the Durst phone is 3 phone calls in December of 81, December 15th of 81. Do you recall receiving 3 phone calls from Kathy Durst in December, specifically December 15th, 1981?
So, if I understand correctly, these phone numbers, 744-4656, was my phone number?
Yes.
So, and then the 377-6392,
Yes.
that was also my number?
That's what this document seems to indicate.
Okay, that could have been work. So the question again was...
Okay, let me get back to where we are.
Okay.
What I believe this to be is a summary done by law enforcement of the telephone records that were at 37 Riverside Drive. That's a residence listed to Robert Durst.
That's the
212-877-3413.
Okay.
Assuming that this is an accurate summary done by law enforcement of these records. They show 3 calls to you on December 15th, 81. Do you recall receiving 1, 2, or 3 calls from Kathy Durst in this middle of December of 1981?
No, I don't recall that. Are the numbers or minutes are called last time?
I believe that's correct. So one of them is 19 minutes, one of them is 1 minute, and one of them is 2 minutes. Let's take it one at a time. The first one is to number 203-377-6392. Was that your number in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1981?
I don't really recall. It could have been a work number, but I don't recall what the numbers were at that time.
For record clarification, did you live in Danbury and have a business in Bridgeport?
I had a business in Stratford, which is right next to Bridgeport.
Okay. So would the number come up as being listed in Bridgeport?
I don't know. It could.
Do you still have that business?
I haven't had it since 1982.
Okay. And so you don't recall the number that you had at that business?
I don't.
What about the other number, 744-4656, area code 203?
That could have been the number I had when I lived in Denver.
Do you still live in Denver?
No, I lived in Brookfield for the last maybe 35 years.
Do you remember that phone number?
Well, the 744 sounds familiar, but the 4656, I'm not really certain. I also had a business in Denver, so I don't know if it could have been that.
Okay, well, back to the central question.
Yes.
Do you recall the telephone call, talking to Kathy Durst on the telephone, December 15th or thereabouts, 1981, on 1, 2, or 3 occasions?
This is H then? It says H.
I believe that's what I'm on record. Is that right? Yes, H. I want to go back to the time when you went with Roberta, and she had, unbeknownst to you until you got there, a bag of, you now say white powder. You believe it was cocaine, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought it was.
And did you, after that occurred, that evening, did you ask to leave? Did you?
Did I ask to move?
Yeah. Did you ask to leave the party? Did you stay? Once the cocaine came out, did you ask to leave or did you stay?
Yeah, that wasn't boring. I didn't ask to leave, no.
Okay, if it wasn't a party, what was it?
And we started getting together with the people that were there.
And who were the other people there?
I couldn't see who they were.
Did you know Kathy Durst then?
I didn't know her, right?
Were you acquainted with her? Would you recognize her?
I would have recognized her.
Did you see her there?
I don't recall being able to see who was there.
Did you see Bob Durst there?
I wasn't going to tell, or I couldn't tell you now who was there. I didn't recognize anybody from the distance they were from me. I was sitting on a couch separated from the people who were doing whatever they were doing. I couldn't tell who was there.
How long were you there?
I don't think we were there too long.
Did you use while you were there? Use meaning partake in the cocaine?
First of all, I don't know what was cocaine. Secondly, I did not partake or anything. I was not with them. I was sitting on the couch by myself, waiting for the person to do what they were doing, and then I would eat.
I don't mean to be facetious, but did you think it was baby powder?
I made an assumption that it was probably cocaine, but I cannot tell you that it was cocaine because I have no direct experience of it being cocaine.
volunteered that information to me when we talked, didn't you?
Which information?
About the cocaine, Gilbert and the cocaine.
Yes, I volunteered information that I wrote down with her. Capture my perception was that she put cocaine with her.
Okay. Now, I guess I've used this before, but were you so shocked that you never wanted to go there again, or was it just something that was happening in the 80s? Were you so shocked that you didn't want to go there again, or was this just something that happened in the 80s?
I guess in the 80s, things like that would be happening.
Okay. May I have this moment? One other subject.
Yes.
You know, never believe a lawyer when he says one other question, so I'll say one. Okay, one other subject. Mr. Bailey started by asking you if you had seen the Jinx, the TV extravaganza.
Yes, that's right.
And he asked you whether you saw the make-believe movie, All Good Things, and I don't remember your answer.
Yeah, I don't believe I saw that, although I have the tape of it. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Okay, well, you don't need to watch it. No?
Yeah.
Well, did you get offered money to participate in the Jinx?
I got offered money to participate in a movie. I think it was the Jinx. I was offered $5,000 to be interviewed for the movie. And I thought, for the situation, if they wanted to have a couple of zeros, I would consider it.
So you would have done it for $50,000 or $500,000, not for $500,000. Okay.
And it wasn't going to happen.
So we just know where your level is. 500,000 would have got you, but 5,000 wasn't going to get you. But there was another company that paid you for some photographs, right?
That's correct.
And that was ABC or
That's correct, ABC.
ABC, and they wanted pictures of your black eye.
They wanted pictures of the tree.
They also wanted you to be interviewed,
They did.
and they only offered you $50.
I don't remember if they offered me anything. I think he said that they don't pay for interviews.
Okay, but they did pay you for the photographs.
They did.
A one-time use of the photographs.
That's correct.
How much?
I believe it was either $3,000 or $5,000. I don't recall exactly.
Okay, so Jarecki, who directed the Jinx, was offering you $5,000 to participate, which you turned down. It would have taken $500,000.
Maybe.
And ABC offered you, and paid you just to use your photographs.
That's correct.
Thank you, that's all.
Redirect examination would be actually, it's time for a break for everyone.
If I just have two questions, he's trying to make a flight. Can I just ask two quick questions?
Oh, that reminds me. Did you fly here first class?
No.
Second class?
What is second class?
Business class?
I flew in the regular cabin with a, which I upgraded my seat so it wouldn't get cramps in my legs. That was the extent of it.
Upgraded it on your own hook.
Yeah, I upgraded it and for it.
And where are you staying? I don't know.
I
Me
stayed at
exactly.
the Hilton here. No, well, the airport Hilton.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me, can you tolerate a couple more questions?
Thank you so much.
Yes, okay.
It's very brief.
Thank our reporter.
Earlier, Mr. DeGuerin was questioning you about a document that's labeled Defendant C. It's the police report, which purports to state that someone told this officer that you were punched in the face. Okay, you wanted to add something or clarify something about that, and you weren't given the opportunity. I'd just like to ask you, is there something you'd like to explain about that?
Yes, I was never punched by Bobby. If someone made a statement that he was punching me, it could have only been when I was stepping into the floor and he was flailing. I never received any punches from him, only the kick in the eye and the bruise from tackling me and pushing me to the radio.
And do you have a better memory today of how by the defendant.
Being kicked in the face was definitely one of the alibi.
Any follow-up on that? Anything
No,
else?
that was actually two questions. I compliment Mr. Bailey.
And are you done also?
Yes, done.
May this witness be excused? Any objection?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we'll then, yes.
Please have to state his age for the record since this was a conditional exam.
State your age for the record.
My age, I'm 69.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I have now, People's 48 was the DVD, 48A was the transcript. I have a sheet, the exhibit sheet, which correlates the exhibit numbers from the video to today's exhibit numbers. May I mark this sheet as People's 48B?
Yes.
And, Your Honor, we've had a running discussion amongst our group. I guess we should ask you. So, would you like everything to be a people's number, or would you like us to start renumbering defense exhibits as the current defense exhibit? Or we can just keep everything as people's, even though it's a defense exhibit?
What do you think, Ron? It's easier for us if you label it as a people's exhibit.
Okay,
And,
with the understanding that some of these people's exhibits were defense exhibits in these videos.
Sure. I mean, whether it's a people's exhibit or a defense exhibit gives it no special weight. There's no special treatment that's given to it. Something may be persuasive regardless of who may happen to label it.
Yeah, I wanted a clarification myself, Your Honor, about how we get the exhibits that were referred to in his testimony into the record for this jury.
Yes, that's how we'll do it.
The other issues we're still then going to have to litigate at some point, just because it's marked, what is actually admissible.
Right, subject to the courts admitting it.
Correct.
That's true for any exhibit.
Okay, so I have on this sheet, in this video, what was referenced as People's 10 will now be People's 48C. What was referenced in the video as People's 18 will now be People's 48D. What was marked in the video as People's 19 will now be People's 48E. What was marked in the video as People's 20 will now be marked as People's 48F. What was marked in the video as Defense A will now be marked as People's 48G. What was marked in the video as Defense B will now be marked as People's 48H. What was marked in the video as Defense C will now be marked as People's 48I. What was marked in the video as Defense D will now be marked as People's 48J. What was marked in the video as Defense E will now be marked as People's 48K. What was marked in the video as Defense B will now be marked as People's 48L.
You said B.
I'm sorry. What was marked as Defense F, correct what I just said.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. DeGuerin. Will now be marked as People's 48L. What was marked in the video as Defense G will now be marked as People's 48M. And what was marked in the video as Defense H will now be marked as People's 48N. And, Your Honor, if the court deems it appropriate at this time, may we published the photograph of the black eye as well as the injury to the back. So they see it in close proximity to the video, or would you prefer we just leave it as a exhibit as at this point?
The objection of publishing it? I mean, we have the foundation, the witness testified, ordinarily the jury would see it.
No objection to publishing it, Your Honor. And so I'm clear, we moved to introduce what was defendant's exhibits A through H as 48G through 48M.
And we'll address that at the close of the evidence. We'll take a day to go through all the exhibits. Okay, go ahead. Note any objections you might have. You may publish the exhibit.
Apologize, Your Honor, it's switching to the, there we go.
Your Honor?
This is what is now People's 48D. And this is what is now People's 48E. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the court might have previously done this, if so, I apologize. And I know we've discussed it, and it came up in voir dire, but could the court just instruct the jury that we have edited the videos that they're showing pursuant to the court's instructions?
I have another instruction that I'll also give at this time, pursuant to the stipulation about how they ought to be familiar with it.
Yes, sir, we'd like to publish our exhibits.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I don't have them here.
Okay, well, when you, we can do that before we begin with the next witness. But these were, the videos were edited in order to remove superfluous conversation, objections, and such. Yes. The people do have a copy of the defense exhibits, but if you'll get that ready, that might be easier for the defense.
Yeah, we'll have to have a discussion of which parts we would object to and not object to.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, certain witnesses in this case have already testified in front of the court at a prior proceeding. These are conditional examinations. The testimony of each of these witnesses was video recorded and transcribed for later potential use at this trial. Both sides have agreed to present this videotape testimony to this jury instead of calling the witnesses live. You must evaluate this testimony by the same standards that you apply to a witness who testified here in court before you. All right. So let's, why don't we excuse our jurors till 1:30? Ladies and gentlemen, do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, including the other jurors. Do not make up your mind about the verdict or any issue until after you've discussed the case with the other jurors during deliberations. We'll see you at 1:30. And are we going to, Ron, we're going to collect these transcripts now?